in 1814 to be the best light infantryman in the British Army. So quite the compliment. So now we see the British charging up the hill. Will Fraser's gamble pay off? To his luck and to the luck of the men of the 49th.
Wow, there's a lot of people here. Maybe we'll get a nice spot. This is the battlefield, actually. So we're gonna watch from here. And we are watching the people here. Wow. I don't know where to find a good spot. Is this a good spot in the middle? So I guess this is the good spot because the reenactment will be on that side. That way. That's the crowd. Ooh. It looks like the war is starting soon. Look, that's the British.
I've been trying.
Is it the British or American? I know American is black uniform, but I mix.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Drums, the Crown Forces 1812. We do not represent any particular regiment in the British Army, but rather we honor all the fifers and drummers of the various British regiments that fought during that war. This evening we're going to present you with a small sample of the military music that might have been heard in the British Army at a place like Stoney Creek. Ready.
up, this would be a very odd hobby in the park. But we are, what we're doing today is we're going to be showing our reenactment of the night engagement of the Battle of Stoney Creek. Now, a little bit of a precursor for those who missed the afternoon battle. The Americans had captured Fort George and had basically forced the British to abandon all of the Niagara, and they had quickly fallen back to Burlington Heights, about where Dundurn Castle is today, where they had a fortified camp. The Americans pursued them, but upon seeing the strength of the fortifications, decided that they should rest before they launch any attacks and await reinforcements. So along Stoney Creek, they set up their camp. This gave the British an opportunity because their scouts noted that the American camp had been laid out extremely poorly. It was spread out, their campfires were in amongst their tents, meaning it lit them up easily for you to see them. A good camp should actually have their cookie fires on the edges so that it lights up whoever's coming at you, not your camp. And in such a situation, the British decided that this was an opportunity to take a risk. With a small number of soldiers, just about 800 strong, they decided that they were going to launch a night assault by the bayonet point in attempts to disorganize and perhaps even knock the Americans off kilter enough for them to withdraw, knowing their position, though strong, was not going to be strong enough to resist the American forces, as well as potentially the United States Navy, which had been prowling around out on the lake. So the Americans set themselves up and they deployed what were called pickets, which you see out here in the field. Pickets were human, they were kind of human tripwires. You would set the men out in front of your encampments, and basically if the enemy got too close or they saw someone coming, they were instructed to open fire upon them, just a quick shot, and quickly fall back to the camp, alerting everybody inside what was happening. The American commanders decided to take the first U.S. rifles and put them on picket duty, despite everybody telling them riflemen make terrible pickets. Riflemen are great scouts and skirmishers, great bushfighters, some of the best the U.S. Army has, but when it comes to the discipline needed to stay up all night in the dark, well, they tended to take naps as soon as they could. And one of the first things they did once left on their own is almost all of the riflemen went inside a local church, laid down in the pews, and promptly fell asleep. It was a perfect recipe for the British to launch their attack.
This is the night attack of the British soldier to the American.
Picket. Historically, the British were able to completely overwhelm the picket inside the church, dispatching most without a sound. But as they approached the other
war
pickets,
started here.
A musket fire began to punctuate the night, giving away the position of the British and alerting the camp of the impending attack. Now of note, I should point out the troops that are right in front of the church right now are soldiers of the 49th. Historically, the 49th were the soldiers who spearheaded the assault, led by Major Charles Plenderleath. They're easily identified by their green cuffs and collars. And when they came to Canada in 1803, they were led by a particular colonel by the name of Isaac Brock. The 49th served with great distinction throughout the war and is one of the true 1812 regiments when it comes to this history. So all of that being exposed on the outside means that misfire was a huge problem for the musket. Even in good conditions, 20% of the time, it might not work. If it's raining, snowing, or really windy, you have a stick rather than a musket. So it begs the question, how is this an effective weapon? Well, the simple fact of the matter is you already know. If you've seen in the movies or in textbooks those big long lines, the volley fire would help counteract the problems. The idea was that if you fire enough muskets, then enough of them are going to go off, that enough lead is going to go across the battlefield, that you're going to hit something. But fighting in this fashion produces a problem you are witnessing out on the field: smoke. Smoke in battles could get quite thick. On most battles, once fully engaged, you couldn't see your enemy until they were about 30 or 40 paces away. At Lundy's Lane, they were the distance I am from these fine folks here, and they could not see one another. So one of the questions we get asked all the time is, why on earth did the British, so vaunted as a great army, decide to wear bright red? Well, the fact of the matter is, you wanted something that when you stepped out of the smoke screamed to half of the men, "I am a friend, do not shoot me." The Americans wore blue, made it easy to identify. Now what happens to the clever fellers who show up?
Wow, that's what happened.
Now, if your musket is misfiring, there's different ways that you can try to fix it. One of the problems that can happen is where the pan ignites, but it doesn't travel through the touch hole. So you get a flash in the pan. You get a lot of flame, a lot of smoke, but nothing of consequence. You have to clean out your touch hole if you wanted to get it to work. The other problem is if your flint has gone dull, you'll have to give it a new sharp edge. And you do this by taking a metal tool and tapping at the end. This is called napping your flint. And it's very important that if you're napping, that you do not let your enemy catch you. Because if you're napping your flint, you cannot shoot back. So as they would say then, don't get caught napping. The Canadian Volunteers was a regiment raised out of the Niagara in 1813 out of disaffected Canadians, numbering 153 men. Their commanding officer actually was a sitting member of the legislature in York when he took his commission. So, you think you got problems with your politicians. He even burnt down his own constituency in December of 1813, the village of Newark. His name was Joseph Wilcox. Good news, he did meet his end. At the siege of Fort Erie, he was killed, and he got the perfect ending for a Canadian traitor, an unmarked grave in Buffalo.
Wow! Oh, look at that. Look at the smoke.
Now you'll notice as the lines are firing, they're not firing the entire line at once. The idea was that you would fire by companies and by groups. This would allow you to keep a constant rate of fire across the battlefield with the musket. In the hands of a well-trained soldier in this era, 20 seconds was the benchmark to load and fire your musket. Some were much quicker.
That's the Battle of Smoke.
I actually know a fellow who the fastest time he has been clocked is just under 8 seconds. So it can be done. But as all of us know from group projects, you are only as fast as your slowest member. So 20 seconds will be the benchmark.
Wow.
We got two.
Now the forces out on the field aren't just regular soldiers, they're also militia units out on the field. In Canada and the United States, the militia was pretty similar. If you're an able-bodied adult male, welcome to the militia. It was a part of citizenship. During peacetime, militia training usually consisted of coming to a fort or a depot on a holiday like the King's birthday over here or the 4th of July over there, and proving that you could do a little bit of drill and you could load and fire a musket. Usually it was a festival more so than a training day because they'd have fireworks for the kids, they'd have bands playing, and they'd have food and drink. In particular note, most forces force offered free alcohol to any militiaman who successfully completed his duties. So, not a great training method, but when war breaks out, militia can be called up for service for any time from 30 days to an entire year. And during that time, they would receive proper training. Some of the Canadian militia, by the end of the war, were considered on par, if not better, than their British regular counterparts. One of the units out here in the Incorporated Militia of Upper Canada was actually noted in 1814 to be the best light infantryman in the British Army. So quite the compliment.
This is the Battle of Smoke.
Now, historically, the British were able to successfully surprise the Americans and began to push deeper and deeper into their camp. The darkness not only allowed them to get so close, but the poor layout of the American camp meant that many of the soldiers, when they formed up, were too far away to participate. Modern scholars have done research, and they estimate that over half of the over 3,000 Americans did not participate in the battle, instead standing to arms at their own camps out of the battle. But as the British pushed in, they began to take heavier and heavier casualties. The American forces at close range actually had a weapon that was devastating. Unlike the British, who fire a single solid lead ball, the Americans fired what was called buck and ball. It was a lead ball and 3 buckshot. Now that doesn't sound too bad, but within 50 yards, the buck called case or canister shot. Imagine, if you will, a tin can or burlap sack filled with musket balls or grape-sized iron balls. When you fire it, you basically turn the cannon into a giant shotgun. When it flew at men, accounts of the time said it sounded like locusts descending upon the pharaohs of Egypt. And when it would strike men, it sounded like fabric being torn in two.
Whoa.
The men struck would be rendered indistinguishable from butchered horse flesh. The Americans had canister down those barrels. Some of them had double canister. And the British concern was that if the Americans opened up at such close range, they would cut huge bloody holes in their ranks.
So on this battle, the American retreat. The British soldier won. As you can see, only 2
Now, with the threat of the cannon, the British had to make a decision on what they were going to do. So this decision came down to the men of the 49th, led by Sergeant Fraser. And the decision was made not to sit and wait to be slaughtered, but to charge headlong into the mouth of the enemy guns. Either they would be cut down, or they would gain glory, take the guns, and save the day for the rest of the army.
Let's see. There we go.
Across the field, you'll hear the officers shouting orders up and down the lines of both the American and the British forces. Officers in both armies tend to come from a more privileged background simply because being an officer was too expensive for an average person. Officers were expected to purchase their own uniforms, weapons, equipment, almost everything. Some even brought their own kitchens and food along with them on the march. The wealth of the officers
they're
was
advancing.
well noted, but it begs a question, why spend all this money to get shot at? Well, for British soldiers, it was a case that being an officer, you could land, title, promotion, and become rich and powerful. For Americans, so now we see the British charging up the hill. Will Fraser's gamble pay off? To his luck and to the luck of the men of the 49th, the American commanders of the gun battery have been told to hold their fire. The fear of friendly fire led them to believe they might be firing upon their own men. They successfully overran the guns and in the process captured General Winder of the U.S. Army. The story goes that Fraser, with his bayonet still slicked with blood, leveled it at Winder, and Winder turned to him, leveled a pistol, and Fraser said, "If you stir, sir, you die." Winder surrendered. He would be one of 2 generals to surrender that day, leaving the American forces leaderless come the morning.
Very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for all of the reenactors who have come out this weekend. Some have come quite the distance to be out here. Stoney Creek is an event that many of us reenactors love to come back again and again. A testament, this is my 20th anniversary of the first one I came out to, and I'll be back again and again and again. You keep having it, I'll keep coming out. Sometimes they might even take away the mic.
Where's the fireworks?